Garrett Blevins here with a mid-workout voiceover. So last week I did 495 for 3 sets of 6. This week I have 15 more pounds, and I'll kind of have a linear increase here for a little while, pretty much as long as I can, I suppose. But I'm also doing 4 sets instead of 3 today, so that was I'd probably be planning to have my first set done, which was okay. It didn't move great, but it certainly moved better than 495 moved last week. So I mean, there's just neurological adaptation that swings back pretty fast, especially after time off. And then I didn't record my second set, but it was pretty brutal. Took a little bit longer rest, about 6 minutes in between that and my third set. Third set was tough too. I focused a little bit more on depth on the third set because I noticed I was a little bit, I wasn't high necessarily, but I wasn't as deep as usual. And it's actually easier for me to squat when I'm getting to depth, but I'm having a little, just like probably a 2 on a scale out of 1 to 10, SI joint pain. Part of that I think is due to just how many reps I'm doing. It's just a lot more than I'm used to, even though the weights are lighter. So that's something I'm watching. Trying not to overextend on my lockout on squats. So noticed that on my first set depth was not the greatest, so I went a little deeper. And on the last rep of the third set, I really focused on pushing my knees forward out of the bottom. But if I push my knees forward, it makes depth harder to get to because it pushes the knee forward and down when you go forward. I mean, my knees can't come up off the ground if they're moving forward. Obviously, they have to get closer to the ground. And so that rep was the highest rep of them all, though it moved the best. So in any case, that was what was going on with the third set. Going to be going into the fourth set here in a little bit, but definitely going to make sure I get rested and recovered because I have some pretty heavy benching coming up after this, and then hopefully I can manage some additional squat work, but I'll address that when I get there. In any case, on to the fourth set. Whew. So, fourth set is done. It went pretty well. Better, I would say, than the second set for sure. Maybe even better than the third set. Depth was definitely more consistent, I think. But it was pretty interesting because on the last 3 reps of that fourth set, usually when I get fatigued, my knees start to cave a little bit, but they didn't start caving. I was really focusing, I was thinking in the third set knees forward, but I tried on the fourth set to maintain my knee position on the descent of the squat, and then as I started to come up, push the knees forward after I had already hit the bottom, so hit the hole. So if this is my knees, this is my hip crease, I was, instead of pushing knees forward throughout the lift like I was in the third set, 5th rep, I was coming down with my knees were stopping, hip crease down, and then instead of allowing my hips to come up, knees to come back and depend on my back to leverage the weight up, I was holding my knees depth, and then as I came up, focusing on pushing the knees forward as I came up. Now, in reality, my knees were probably staying here, but for me it feels like they're moving forward because I'm used to them kicking back, and my torso, kind of as my knees kick back, my hips will come up and I'll get more forward lean and have to use more back to finish the lift. So, in any case, I was focusing on that knee forward on the way up out of the squat, and I felt all kinds of little muscles and stuff in my glutes, hips, hamstrings, quads, like turning on. Like, for lack of a better way of describing it, was like little bits of electricity rolling through my muscles, like little stabilizer muscles that apparently I have not been using during my lifts. So that was a pretty cool thing. In any case, done with squatting for the day. Gonna move on to benching. Have no idea how benching is gonna go. I already have a headache, it's hot. Training in a garage with no AC, you're kind of beholden to the weather a little bit. So it's not too hot today, and gosh, it's Southern California, so what can you really complain about? But I'm used to my cushy, easy life down here in SoCal, so it's hot for me.
Live a sweet little nerfy life, sitting on your biscuit, never having to risk it.
But I'll drink some water, maybe take a little bit longer break before I start the benching. But anyways, check in a minute. Whew. Alright, so starting to catch my breath with bench warm-ups. I wanted to talk about two things while I take a little bit bigger break here. First thing, put out the announcement about thinking about doing a novice program, specifically an early novice program, late novice program, early intermediate program that would feed into some of the programs that I use now. I had a good question on YouTube. So on one of my training videos, I think, I'm trying to remember, it might have been a programming video, it doesn't matter. The question was this, should someone who's a novice do linear progression, meaning you're increasing the weight that you're using every workout or every other workout, like a starting strength method, or should they use linear periodization, which is you start a microcycle, however long that is, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever. You start with sets of 10, and then you go to sets of 8 in a couple weeks, sets of 6 a couple weeks later, 4, 3, 2, and then do a test. And there's kind of a linear periodization where you cut down the reps, cut down the volume, increase the intensity. And my answer to that was, when you're a novice, increase the weight workout to workout. Because you're probably not going to know yourself well enough to use RPE. If you could use RPE, then a linear periodization model would be fine, even for a novice. Because there's not really a huge reason for a novice to test singles. If they can keep hitting rep PRs every workout or every workout, every other workout, or every other week, they should just do that. Because if you're using a percentage-based linear periodization model, which is what most linear periodization models are, some are auto-regulated with RPE recommendations. I like to do that in the training that I give people. I always give both, always give percentage and RPE. Just because it's good to start to get to know what those feel like, even in the novice program, because I am going to put it out. I got a really good response from it, so I will be putting that out. I've reached out to a couple of people just to get feedback on what I've already made, so I'm waiting to hear back from them, see any critiques, but that should be coming out fairly soon, I think, as long as they get back to me quick. If not, I'll just put out what I have. It's pretty good. I like it. I would have enjoyed running it as a novice myself. Long story short, though, it will be coming out, and it will have both RPE and percentages given. The most difficult part of the program will be finding your starting numbers, and I haven't figured out exactly how I'm going to advise people to do that, but I think I'm just going to say just go do it. It's going to be a DUP style sort of thing. It'll have like some higher reps in it. It's not going to have singles. It's not even going to have triples in it to start, because as a novice you need to build the base of muscle as well. And it's really, I mean, you're not going to build a big base with singles. But on that note, you are going to get a lot of muscle as a novice, and even as an intermediate, from compound movements. I have people ask me sometimes, will you ever do an aesthetically oriented program? Are you ever going to put out a bodybuilding program? All the programs I put out are bodybuilding programs. I would obviously make some adjustments. There's no need to go and taper down to a single, or really even, I think, triples as a bodybuilder, maybe sometimes, but you're going to spend most of your time in those higher rep ranges because it's easier to amass volume. You're going to be using lighter weights, so you're going to be able to do more repeated sets of that. So that's the way to do it. It's just you're getting more work in, and that's going to help you. You're spending more time under tension. But you shouldn't be using terribly different exercises. I mean, maybe, 15% of your exercises are going to be different. Have some isolation movements for biceps, hamstrings, calves that aren't really hit with the main compounds. But you're not going to get rid of the main compounds unless you have an injury. There are plenty of great bodybuilders who have also done powerlifting. It's not like they needed to change their training 100%. It may change 20% of what they did, and nutrition is the huge point there. Nick Wright recently had a video out. He was just referencing it at some point in the video how he looks so much bigger at 170, and now he's 180. He doesn't look as big on camera because he's not as cut, but in real life he looks a lot bigger. And that's something like, not to have too much bromance with Brandon Campbell, but I went out and met Brandon Campbell. Brandon looks kind of thin. Like, he looks kind of like, whoa, you're really a 230 lifter or whatever, Brandon. You look thin. Meet Brandon in real life when you find out he's like 6'3", and he's a pretty big dude. So anyways, that's my shout out to Brandon, to give him some credit. He's got some old man gains there. But it's hard to see when you're just seeing people in camera. You got to see people in person to get a really good perspective of what they look like. Anyways, I've got a little off topic. The novice program will be coming out soon. Linear progression is better than linear periodization for novices, unless the linear periodization is RPE based, so that novice is going to increase a little bit more than they would just on a regular percentage-based program, where they very well may be using their 1 rep max, their old 1 rep max, for sets of 4 partway through the program. I know some of my clients have done that. By the end of the 20-week program, there are these really long macro cycles with 4 different micro cycles within them. Many of these people were still intermediate athletes, but they're auto-regulated programs, and so they're not held back by rigid percentages that cap what weights they should be using. And if you have some instinctual training, then that's good. But it's hard for novices to train instinctually or even know what that means, which is why I like to just say, hey, let's do a linear progression, 5 pounds for as long as you can. And the only thing that you adjust is how far each test is between. So also, for the people that have said they're interested in that early intermediate or intermediate program, it's definitely going to take me a little longer to get that one out than the early novice. Also, I want you to know that this is not numbers based. It's not like if you're this strong, if you can bench 225, squat 315, and deadlift 365, you're now an intermediate. That's not how the designations are. Those designations are helpful, but they're only helpful in terms of maybe seeing where you're at compared to other people of your body weight, Wilks score, something like that to classify. But there's not certain training that's just necessarily going to make sense for certain people, because genetically some people can progress on a novice program much longer than a person can on the intermediate, and you do not want to move to intermediate or advanced training ever. I would love to still be a novice lifter and be able to just linear progress every week. Being a novice doesn't mean you're weak. Being a novice means you gain strength, or you gain a cap on your strength. You can set rep maxes every week or every other week. That's an awesome place to be. Milk that for as long as you can. It's not negative to say you're a novice in that sense. I stayed as an intermediate lifter much longer than most other people. I had an elite total in powerlifting, but I was still gaining strength like an intermediate. And sometimes you regress, like you go from being an advanced lifter to an intermediate lifter again, especially if you gain a bunch of body weight. If you want an example of that, look at Bryce Lewis over the last year. He's going to be competing at Nationals soon, so you'll get to see whatever total he puts up. But he's already set, I think, the unofficial, if not the official. I know it was more than anybody had ever done, 1922 total. At last Nationals, I think he totaled 1820 something. He's put like 100 pounds on his total in the last year. And based off his gym lifts, his total is up to 2,000 pounds. So he's put like 180 pounds on his total as an already elite lifter who beat the old national champion Nick Tyluki last year, along with Eli and myself, who had been the reigning champ for like 7 years in a row. Long story short, sometimes when you change, because during that, like, how did Bryce do that? Well, Bryce gained a bunch of weight. He went from being a 93 kilogram lifter to a 105. He's on really good training programs. He's found the right mix for him, and he's dialed his form in. He has a good coach. I mean, he's doing everything he can to maximize his ability, short of taking performance-enhancing drugs, as far as I know. I mean, I'm not there watching him. I'm not in his bathroom at night or whatever, but I trust the guy. I don't see that as an unreasonable thing to do. Some people will, and that's fine. Like, I get it. There have been so many scandals and that sort of stuff in lifting where people say they're not on drugs and they are, that I get how you get burned out. Every time somebody gets popped for drugs, it makes me sad, because I just wonder why. But regardless, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole another can of worms. And as far as I've seen, and if anybody wants to comment on this below and start arguments, I've never seen anybody change their mind on that based off of YouTube comments. So, I mean, anybody is more than welcome, and I can't stop you from sharing your opinion anyways, but let's not get into a big fight and debate about it, because really we're not changing anybody's mind. Everybody has their perspectives. Perspectives and beliefs change very, very slowly over time, if they ever change. Because you can't just decide to change a belief that you actually hold. You need to have something happen, either evidence shown or something like that, and there's not going to be really any evidence to prove someone is clean or isn't clean. Drug tests alone aren't enough to do that. They can help, they can catch people sometimes, but it's not. Anyways, that's my 2 cents on a whole lot of topics. But I'm going to get back to benching, and we'll see how the rest of that goes.